What's up guys, Eric Vasquez here with a brand new design basics video for you today. And in this lesson we're going to be talking about how to set up your documents as print-ready PDFs. Now I know this is a topic that some of you guys have been interested in the past, so today we're going to be walking through that process using Adobe Photoshop and InDesign. So let's jump right into it. Now over here in Photoshop, I'll be using this mock-up from one of my previous tutorials for the Unleash Your Imagination Creative Writing Toolkit book cover mock-up. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen that tutorial or not, but I walked you guys through the process of designing this flat artwork and then applying it to a mock-up. So let's just say, for example, that we were actually going to produce this book and we needed to send print-ready files to the printer. Well, how would we do that? So the first thing I want to show you guys is how I would do this. And of course, like many things in design, there are probably several ways to achieve the same result. But whenever I'm creating PDFs, I like to use InDesign. Now, of course, you can save a PDF out of Photoshop, but if you're creating any kind of, professional document or any kind of multi-page document, especially for, editorial magazines or anything like that, you're going to want to know how to use InDesign a little bit. So over here, you can see that we have our flat layout, and the first thing we want to do is come to our image size. Now, you can see here that our image is set up as 5.84 inches wide by 8.76 inches tall. Okay, and that's going to be our trim area, right? So that is the entire area of our page that we actually want when everything is trimmed and applied to our cover. So what I like to do is create a couple of new layers, and I'll just fill it with a solid color, okay? And then I'll call this the trim area, and this is just basically going to be like a quick guide, basically. And then let's turn on the rulers, and then what I like to do is create a safety area, okay? And the safety area is just coming in at least maybe say 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch from all four sides, as you can see here. And that is basically going to determine the area where we want to keep any important information or images away from that area. Okay, so I can go ahead and create another rectangle inside that will serve as my trim area, or the safety area. Okay, and then I can just lower the opacity of that, maybe knock it out of the trim area, and we'll call this our safety. All right, and then of course we have the third thing, which is our bleed. Now the bleed is really important because it's adding a little bit of extra room around all four sides, just so that the printer has a little bit of room to work with. What you don't want is an image or a layout without any bleed, because if the printer goes in and trims this, you could end up with some of the white of the paper showing, and you don't want that. Alright, so let's come back up here, and now we'll go to canvas size. And the best way to figure this out, I just used a calculator, but you basically want to add 1/4 inch to the width and to the height. So we're going to change this to 6.9 inches wide by 9.1 inches tall, which seems like a bit of an oddball size, but that's okay. And now what we've done is created a little bit of extra room here for the printer to work with. And again, that will be called our bleed area. Alright, so remember these three key terms because they are very important anytime you are prepping images for print. Okay, so let's call this our bleed. Of course, we can lower the opacity and knock both of those other shapes out of it. And now we can just throw these three things into a folder called guides, so that you guys can quickly and easily see, either using this or using your rulers, where those guidelines lie. And it looks like we're in pretty good shape now, so the next thing we want to do is make sure that this is in CMYK. Okay, but before we do that, you just want to come in here and pay attention, because when I added bleed, a few of these images in here got chopped off. So we'll just need to go in and correct that manually. So let me do that really quick just to fix those things. Okay, so now that we make sure that all of our graphics and illustrations here go all the way to the edge, what we want to do is save the file, okay, just so we can make sure that everything is in place. And then we're going to actually flatten the image. All right, come up to Image Mode and change it to CMYK. And this is just if you aren't working in CMYK from the start. All right, and then what you want to do is go up here to File, Save As. And we're going to save this as a flattened TIFF file. Okay, so let me just save this to my desktop, call it TIFF, add a CMYK to the end of the file name just so I know. Okay, and then we can basically just quit out of here and come over to Adobe InDesign. Okay, so once we're over here in InDesign, we want to set our document up in inches, and we're going to set this up as 5.84 inches by 8.76 inches, which is our trim size. Okay, and then we're going to come down a little bit to where it says bleed and slug, and we're basically going to add 1/8 of an inch to all four sides, so that's 0.125 inches, which in total is 1/4 inch added to the width and 1/4 inch added to the height. Okay, and then go ahead and click on Create. Now, it may seem odd to jump over to a different program to be creating a PDF like this, but this is what InDesign is made for. I mean, anytime that you're setting up any kind of book, magazine, or other publication, this is really the program of choice. So I want you guys to start to get familiar with these tools if you haven't already used InDesign before, because while you can make PDFs in Photoshop, it's not always the best way because it's not quite made for that purpose. So that's why I personally like to use InDesign and why I want to show you guys this process today. So once you've got this set up here, you want to come over to the toolbar and choose the rectangle frame tool, and you can see the keyboard shortcut for that is F. And all we're going to do here is click on the very top where you have that red guide all the way on the outside, because that is our bleed area. Okay, so this is the full size of our document that we created. Now we're going to press Command-Control-D on the keyboard to import our image, and then we're just going to navigate to the desktop where we saved our TIFF file, the CMYK. Just go ahead and choose Open, and then hold the Control key and click on the image, and we're just going to make sure that everything is fitting properly. So come down here to where it says Fitting, and then make sure to say Fill Frame Proportionally, and it looks like everything is where it should be. And you'll notice that in this preview it looks a little bit grainy, but you can also fix that by holding Control, clicking, and choosing Display Performance High Quality Display. Okay, so now you're seeing the full high-res image here. And if I zoom out or fit this to my screen, you can see that this inner gray line here is our trim area. Our safety, of course, is a little bit in from that, and then we have our full bleed. So now all we need to do is come up here to File and choose Export, or you can press Command-E on the keyboard. Now we'll go ahead and save this with the same name. Okay, and then we're going to choose Adobe PDF Print, not interactive. We want a high-res print file. All right, and then we'll choose Save, and we'll now be prompted with this dialog box here where we just need to change a couple of options. So let's go ahead and change this to PDF X1A, which is kind of the standard here because it can be read in almost any version of Acrobat. Okay, and then we're going to come down here to where it says Marks and Bleeds. Now, over here you'll see that you have Bleed and Slug, and we're just going to check off the Use Document Bleed settings. Okay, we don't need to worry about the slug area for now, but that's basically an area where you would put some secondary information like, who created the file, what the name of the file, and things like that. But we don't really need to worry about that too much now. And then, of course, we're going to come up here, and let's go ahead and check off crop marks. And then I like to offset it by about 1/4 of an inch. And then let's just go ahead and click Export and see what we get. Now we can go ahead and open our PDF in Adobe Acrobat and just take a look at the file. Okay, now you can see we have our high-res print-ready PDF for our book cover design. Now these crop marks that we've added here, if you follow the lines, it basically is an indication of where those bleed areas are, where that bleed mark begins and where it ends. So when you send this off to a printer, they're basically going to use those lines to trim along. Okay, so that's why we added a little bit of extra space there, a little bit of padding to the outside edges of our design, just to give them a little bit of room for basically human error in case anything goes wrong. So as I mentioned, there's usually a lot of different ways that you can achieve the same kind of results, but this is the process and the technique that I like to use anytime that I'm creating print-ready files. So again, I showed you guys, some of the terminology that you want to be familiar with, thinking about the safety area, keeping all important information inwards and away from the edges. You want to think about the trim area, which is the full document size. And then you want to, of course, add a little bit of room for bleed. Now once you do that, make sure to flatten your image, convert it to CMYK if you're not working in CMYK from the beginning, and then go ahead and save your file with a different name as a high-res TIFF. From there, you come over to InDesign, you set up your document, you add the bleed to it, import the image, export it with the settings I just showed you, and you're good to go. So hopefully it wasn't too elaborate of a process. I know it seems like a lot of steps, but after you do it 2 or 3 times, it becomes really easy, almost second nature, where you don't even really have to think about it. So I hope that you guys found this to be helpful. Hopefully you learned a few new tips and tricks along the way. And, hopefully this answers some questions for you guys out there who are wondering about how to do this and how to set this up. I know for a lot of my design tutorials, I don't always show this part of the process because we're mostly focusing on, the design itself and creating it, whereas this is more about, production and pre-press and kind of the boring stuff, but it's essential either way. So I'm glad that I could share this with you guys today. Please let us know if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts. Leave those below. Be sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button to subscribe to the Design Cuts YouTube channel. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Eric Vasquez, and we'll see you next time.